So I would like to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are joining us in. My name is Claudia, and on behalf of the Initiative for Multipurpose Prevention Technologies and CAMI Health, I'd like to warmly welcome you to today's Let's Talk MPTs webinar, From Insight to Innovation, Integrating User Preferences into MPT Development. Thank you for joining us from all over the world. We are so delighted to have you with us and are especially pleased to welcome our distinguished speakers, who I will introduce shortly. Today's discussion will be moderated by Dr. Bethany Young-Holt. She's also the Executive Director of the IMPT. Together, we'll explore how these end-user perspectives can inform the design and development of multipurpose prevention technologies, and we look forward to an engaging discussion with all of you. Before we begin today's program, I'd like to take a moment to go over a few housekeeping announcements to help ensure today's session runs smoothly. So feel comfortable, or if you feel comfortable doing so, please introduce yourself in the chat. You can share your name, your organization, and country. The webinar is being recorded and will be made available on the IMPT website after the session. To ensure the best audio quality, you have all been muted. So if you have any questions during the presentations, please put them in the chat. We'll collect them throughout the session and address as many as possible during the discussion at the end. Thank you, and we hope you enjoyed today's webinar. With the logistics covered, let's take a quick look at today's program. So after I run us through all the logistics and provide a brief overview of the IMPT, the first presentation will be by Drs. Nyaradzo Mgodi and by Dr. Alexandra Minnis, followed by Dr. Gottert. And following these presentations, Dr. Bethany Young-Holt will facilitate the discussion before we conclude today. Now, before we head over to our presentations, I'd like to take a few moments to introduce you to the IMPT, especially for those who might be joining us for the first time. So the IMPT is a cornerstone in the global effort to advance multipurpose prevention technologies, or MPTs, since it's been launched in 2009. Since this launch, the IMPT has grown to include more than 2,000 stakeholders from nearly 24 countries. This unique initiative acts as a neutral platform, bringing together stakeholders from various backgrounds to offer essential technical guidance and strategic direction. By uniting diverse voices, the IMPT works tirelessly to push forward the development of MPTs, which are crucial for HIV prevention and sexual reproductive health. In 2020, recognizing a need for ongoing dialogue, the IMPT introduced the Let's Talk MPTs webinar series. This series has successfully gathered global experts to discuss research and development priorities. It's not only addressed critical issues, but also fostered collaboration and networking among leading figures in the field. Beyond fostering collaboration, the IMPT also provides a range of resources to support stakeholders across the MPT field, bringing together various knowledge hubs, including an advocacy toolkit, regulatory guidance, socio-behavioral research, and more, making it so much easier to access trusted information in one place. We also feature digital stories, which highlights lived experiences and community perspectives, helping to connect scientific innovation with the voices of the people MPTs are ultimately designed to serve. To support professional development, we provide MPT trainee and career resources, as well as regularly updated list of funding opportunities. Finally, we help keep the community informed and connected through our conferences and events, on-demand webinars, as well as our bi-monthly newsletter, the MPT Insider. At the heart of the Resource Centre is the MPT Product Development Database, a comprehensive, searchable resource that tracks MPT product candidates across indications and stages of development. The database is updated annually to ensure it remains a current and valuable resource for researchers, product developers, funders, and other stakeholders across the field. We are currently in the final stages of this year's update, which will be made available soon. If you haven't explored the database yet, I really encourage you to visit www.mpts101.org and learn more about the product pipeline and the amazing progress being made across the field. With the introduction to the MPT and the resources, it's now my absolute privilege to introduce today's speakers to you. Our first presenters are Dr. Nyaradzo Mgodi. Dr. Nyaradzo Mgodi is a clinical pathologist and a clinical trial specialist with more than 15 years of experience conducting HIV prevention clinical trials among women in sub-Saharan Africa. As lead investigator at the University of Zimbabwe-Clinical Trials Research Centre, she has led numerous studies evaluating HIV prevention products, including MPTs. Next, we have Dr. Alexandra Minnis. She's a social and epidemiological researcher who focuses on sexual and reproductive health among adolescents and young adults in the United States and sub-Saharan Africa. Her research examines end-user perspectives to inform the development of HIV prevention products and MPTs. She's a member of the Women's Global Health Imperative at RTI International and is an associate professor at the University of California, Berkeley School of Public Health. Finally, you will hear from Dr. Gottert. She is a social and behavioral scientist at Population Council. She conducts applied research to inform products, programs, and policies related to sexual and reproductive health and rights globally. Collaborating with cross-disciplinary teams and using advanced quantitative and qualitative methodologies to understand individuals' health-related behaviors within diverse social contexts. She has led several NIH, PEPFAR, USAID, and Gates-supported studies and has published widely. She received a doctorate from UNC Gillings School of Global Public Health and a BA from Brown University. We are delighted to have all three speakers with us today, and we are so grateful for them sharing their expertise and insights. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to hand over to our first presenter. Thank you for joining us. Give me a moment, Dr. Mgodi, and I'll share your slides.
Thank you so much, Claudia, for the kind introduction, and thank you to Kami Health and IMPT for inviting us, myself and Ali, to present on Matrix 002. While you get the slides, confirm you can hear me clearly.
Yes, I can hear you clearly. Thank you, Doctor.
Perfect. Thank you. So we are co-presenting on our end-user research findings to inform MPT film development. We know that women in Africa, especially in low and middle income countries, continue to face a burden on HIV, STIs, and unintended pregnancy. So despite the advances in biomedical HIV, STI, pregnancy prevention modalities for women, the existing drug delivery systems are hindered by many challenges such as limited acceptability, lack of discretion, environmental waste, and inadequate responsiveness to what we women need, our lived experiences and our preferences for product use. Next slide, please. Among available and potentially available delivery systems, we know that vaginal films represent a promising option for topical admin. And the therapeutic areas, as we were speaking earlier on behind the scenes, therapeutic areas that are being pursued for films include HIV prevention, HSV2 prevention, contraception, and the control of heavy menstrual bleeding. So coming to this slide here, it shows the journey of films. This is the vaginal film journey from on-demand to 30-day use. To the left of the slide, you see on-demand films that completed phase 1 studies, and these include dapivirine film and tenofovir film. Moving on, we have a 1 week, a 7-day film that completed a phase 1 study and looking at 2 formulations of MK2048 films in these previous studies. So in these studies, films were found to be safe, acceptable, and to meet the biological activity endpoints in phase 1. So based on feedback from participants and other stakeholders, developers were motivated to work on 1 month films. So as you move to the right of the slide here, you'll see that the duration has extended from on demand through 7 days. Now we're working on 30-day films. So this was based on feedback from participants. So we have 1 month films that are either supported by Matrix or currently being pursued for future IND enabling studies. For example, we have the dapivirine 1 month film, we've got the levonorgestrel 1 month film, and then an MPT comprising dapivirine and levonorgestrel. And these are 1 month films. So work has already started and work has been done on on-demand and 7-day films. Though we know that there was safety in on-demand films and 7-day films, there are several knowledge gaps that we still need to address. Next slide, please. So what is it that we do not know at the moment? We don't know what are the experiences, what is the acceptability and the safety around 1 month use. So working on those gaps or trying to address those gaps, the solution came through Matrix 002. This was the design was informed by multi-sectoral stakeholders, and Matrix 002 was designed to address the unknowns that I've talked about: experiences, acceptability, and safety. So we set to address these unknowns using placebo films and also to support 1 month film development for various active pharmaceutical ingredients. So we know from previous studies that vaginal films are easy to use, private, unique and convenient, low cost. They are safe with no messiness. And the film is an API versatile platform. And the duration of use, I've already talked about it. It can be immediate, 1 week, 1 month, even beyond. So we set out to expedite the research and development of a 30-day vaginal film that is acceptable, affordable, discreet, portable, scalable, and deliverable in settings where they are needed most. Settings like mine, settings like sub-Saharan Africa. So we set out to, next slide please, to provide data or to answer the unknowns. So Matrix 002 is a 2-arm randomized multi-center trial. We enrolled women at low risk of HIV acquisition, aged 18 to 45, and we enrolled some sexual partners across 2 sites in South Africa, 1 in Zimbabwe, 1 in Kenya, and 1 in the US. And we enrolled 100 women and 26 sexual partners, and there was a subset which took part in in-depth interviews at the end of the study. Next slide, please. So the study was approximately 9 weeks per participant. We looked at 2 placebo vaginal films, which were evaluated, no active medication in either film. The difference in the 2 films was just the shape. One was rounded edges, the other one with straight corners. And we worked on these 2 films based on the feedback from stakeholders. And these vaginal films were made from ingredients that are generally recognized as safe, but the polymers that were used in these vaginal films needed a safety profile. So we looked at safety as well, and we'll talk about that in due course. And as I've said, similar vaginal films intended for weekly use rather than monthly have already been evaluated in women without any safety concerns. So this is the first ever evaluation of monthly films in women. Next slide, please. So our study is the very, very, very first study to evaluate a monthly film. Our primary objectives wanted to assess acceptability, the square film, the square edge film versus the round edge or round corner film, safety, usability. What about acceptability across multi-dimension frameworks, as well as sexual partner attitudes and experiences? Next slide, please. So, yes, so this is the study design. Each participants at low risk for HIV were randomized to one of two films, and they used the film once a month for 2 months. First month, the participants were required to abstain from sex or vaginal product use in the first 14 days because we wanted to assess the findings in a controlled environment versus a real-world setting. So that's why we required participants to abstain from sexual intercourse during the first month of film use. So each participant had a total of 11 visits comprised of in-clinic visits as well as phone call follow-up visits. These were mainly to assess acceptability, usability, and of course, safety. We collected baseline behavioral and acceptability data, post-insertion acceptability, usability, and then at the insertion of the second film, we also had follow-up behavioral and acceptability data collection, as well as the insertion. How did the women feel after insertion? Was it easy? What about usability? Even as the clinicians, we would observe the women using the film in clinic so that we checked how confident they were. And at exit, participants and a select number of partners went through post-use in-depth interviews. Next slide. I think this is my last slide. So, drawing on both quantitative assessments of acceptability and film use experiences, as well as in-depth interviews with women and their sexual partners. My colleague, Dr. Minnis here, she will present results addressing multiple key questions, looking at the shape, overall satisfaction with the film. What about day-to-day experiences focused on comfort, awareness, control, burden, and so forth, sexual experiences, and usability. So as was well, I will reiterate that please note that the data that Dr. Minnis is going to present are yet to be published, and they are part of a manuscript which is currently in preparation. We kindly request that this information is not shared, distributed, or cited without prior permission. Ali, could you take us through the findings, please? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Nyaradzo, for setting the stage and introducing everyone on the call to the film and the depth of research that the development team and a lot of iterative end user work has been conducted to date. Next slide, please. So in terms of the participant demographics, we had 100 women enrolled with a mean age of 30, and the range of participant age reflected the eligibility range for the studies, 18 to 44. And as you can see here, there was some variation in terms of people's relationship statuses, which is particularly interesting given the questions that we had about people's experiences, including with sexual partners. And about 40% lived with a partner currently. Go ahead, thank you. One of the key questions, the first one about comparing the two film shapes, presented here on this slide are overall satisfaction ratings for both film types. And you can see that this is a scale from 1 to 10, where 10 was high and extremely high satisfaction scores. And in blue are the square films and orange the round. And you can see both at month 1 and month 2 that overall we have very high scores for both film types. And I wanted to point out just a couple things. One is that looking just column of square and round, you can see that while overall scores are high, for the square film, there's a bit more clustering in the sort of moderately high range relative to the scores of 6, 7, 8, and relative to the round. And this is statistically different, although noting that overall, everything was above the midpoint of the range. By month 2, this difference has disappeared, and so the graphs in the second column for month 2, you can see that they're very, very comparable. Next slide, please. As Nyaradzo alluded to in presenting the study design, we had a very in-depth assessment of acceptability, drawing on a framework that's been used, the theoretical framework of acceptability that's been integrated with implementation relevant outcomes like usability and satisfaction by Christina Ortblad and colleagues. And here, just to give a glimpse of the kind of depth of acceptability data that we have, these are both quantitative assessments reflecting different components of acceptability, so likability, as well as ease of use, which gets at kind of the burden of integrating a product into your lives. And you can see here that, again, on a scale of 1 to 10, the mean or median scores are very high, indicating high acceptability, and that there are slight increases in month 2 relative to month 1, with overall, high even at the first use of film. Next slide. On the next few topical areas, most of the data are going to be from the qualitative interviews, although sprinkled throughout are some quantitative as well. So a few key high-level findings on the film use was really a take-home message is that it was rarely noticed and required little change to daily life. Most participants reported that they couldn't feel it after it was inserted. They could continue with their usual activities. While some reported some short-term vaginal environment changes, these resolved, and they weren't necessarily always regarded negatively. And really, we have so many passages and comments from participants that reflect that really ability to forget about it was central to their perceptions that it fit well into daily life. Even a participant offering that she could run in a race, she could jump, and really carry on without having a noticeable impact. Next, please. One of the findings which resonates with a lot of work with novel products that we've been engaged in over the years, is that with experience, some uncertainty that women felt was really shifted into confidence. I think underscoring the value of a study like this to helping inform next steps for the film. A lot of the descriptions the participants had, at the outset, the concerns that they identified really arose from its novelty and unfamiliarity, which even after insertion was resolved. And I wanted to just make one point here, which is that while we see in the quantitative data and some of the other figures that you see improvements or increased confidence from month 1 to month 2, it's really even after touching the film and holding it in their hand or seeing it and going from, hearing what is a film to being able to interact with it in some way, that this was alleviated. And this was very consistent across all sites. This is, I think, a compliment to the innovation of the product development team, that the attention to physical characteristics of the film itself really reinforcing users' comfort and control. So, seeing that it actually was much smaller than people expected, the transparent appearance, the way that it was packaged. So before even touching it, the response to visually putting one's eyes on it really conveyed very favorable qualities that reinforced confidence and interest and the acceptability rating, so that it looked like it would be clean and private and very feasible. And there's some quotes here integrating or reflecting elements. And the shape one I wanted to just call out, because recall that this was one of the key questions in the study, and that somebody without being asked directly about the corners of the shape indicated that it really didn't bother her at all. It doesn't cause any harm. Just two other qualities of the film itself that came up quite a bit, that I think are some unique features of this product. And other vaginally inserted products, the ability to self-insert the film was really highly valued. Women described a sense of control and a lot of autonomy over how they would use it. And they could choose how it would be folded and where they inserted it and in what position. And that flexibility that was communicated even in the user instructions was a really the strength of the product. They saw that it reduced needs for clinic visits, pharmacy visits, relative to other options like injectables, and the monthly dosing was highly valued. Next, please. So just a few comments about film use experiences and sex. Here, I mean, we had the team had questions. What would happen when people had sex with the film in? And you can see that the 78 participants who did report having vaginal sex during the film period, that none reported that film came out. There were 4 who weren't sure, and that by and large, they described no effects on sexual pleasure, and overall, even liking the film or having no opinion about it during sex. So a neutral position. Next slide. And the takeaway here is really that the sex with the film was typically described as normal, and that across areas of sexual pleasure, being able to feel it, that things were really unchanged, and that the assumption was that it had dissolved or just wasn't present in interacting at all with the experience. Next slide. Some did describe changes in the vaginal environment, wetness, dryness, friction. I mean, things weren't universally going in any one direction. And interestingly, I think importantly, changes weren't necessarily negative. That for some people, they described the change as enhancing pleasure or just a very neutral response to it. And there were some, as you might have seen in the first slide, that sexual pleasure was enhanced for some. And here, really, concerns that were anticipated did not materialize after use. And so very similar to day-to-day use experiences, the concerns around sex itself were really resolved. Next slide. Just a couple comments on the usability question. There was really high success with film insertion, and this was an important question. Can women insert it on their own and just following instructions? And you can see that we had 100 films inserted. So everybody did, and on the first attempt, even in the first try, first month of use, 94% inserted it on the first attempt, and everyone did ultimately. And this was a clinician assessment that said, indicated that they perceived women to be very confident in inserting it. And then on this slide, it's, participants' comfort with the process was also quite high. And closing with a couple comments about a film as an MPT, just a note on women's perspectives. You can see that, like many studies, the idea of dual protection or an integrated HIV and pregnancy prevention product was highly valued and liked, and it excited women. There were a few key things I wanted to pull out that were strong sort of reasons why. One is the idea of less coordination between products, really simplifying their prevention responsibilities. The second is a lot of logistical, saving time to travel to clinics, waiting, cost. And then finally, an increasing of privacy and personal control. And the first quote down here talks about not necessarily needing to disclose to a partner why you're using it. So you could, be preventing HIV while presenting the film as a contraceptive choice, for example. Next slide. And then just sexual partner perspectives. really centered. Also, sexual partners were excited about it, and their questions and comments reflected a lot around reproduction. And so they were very hooked into the contraceptive indication and felt that it could be valuable for supporting planned childbearing, but also really had a lot of questions around return to fertility, need for partner communication. So there'll be some interesting paired results here that kind of offer complementary perspectives of partners and women as users. So in conclusion, just a few remarks around implications for future MPT research. I think we see here and in many studies that no change is really a foundation of product acceptability, that it was rarely noticed both during daily activities and sexual experiences, and that physical invisibility was really strongly influencing positive experiences. Anticipate were quite rapidly. The changes were manageable and temporary and sometimes positive. Sexual partners also found the film to be acceptable and wanted to be included in sharing information about it and to have some conversations with their partners. And the 1 month duration and vaginally inserted was highly favored and appreciated, and really ultimately helped to support women's perspectives that they had control as users over this type of product. And I do want to take a moment just to acknowledge, this is a quote that I think sums up quite well many of these themes. A participant who weaves together the idea that it has no effect and also ultimately quite an advocate for being a part of this research process and an innovator. And yes, innovative pioneer, absolutely. This is a huge team effort. I want to acknowledge the O02 team, and in particular Sharon Hillier and Tess Palani-Phillips for their matrix leadership. Pictured here are slides or photos of study teams from 2 of the sites, US and Zimbabwe. And then on the next slide, if you could go there, I just couldn't resist, given that many of you know Matrix was one of the projects affected by the terminations last year. So just to put some happy memories of all of the work that was accomplished across the Matrix portfolio of projects and the innovative collaborations between product developers and researchers in many areas. And I'd like to just, if you don't mind going to the next acknowledgement slide, to recognize Tess and Sharon and also Leila Mansour from Caprisa for another Matrix study who have worked to secure funding for us to analyze data for studies that were stopped prematurely. So thank you.
Thank you. Just give me a second to get up our next presenter's slide. Dr. Anne, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. The slides up yet? They're not on my screen. Okay, so what I will be sharing with you today is U.S. women's perspectives about their interest in and preferences for MPT vaginal rings. These are findings from a national online survey we conducted with over 2,000 women. And I want to note that more detailed findings are presented in a peer-reviewed open access publication in Frontiers in Reproductive Health, and we can put that in the chat. Next slide. So as you may know, about 1/3 of MPTs currently in development are vaginal rings. So they're actually the most common form of MPT in development. However, little is known about women's preferences regarding the varied attributes of the MPT rings in development. So these rings have different indications, anticipated effectiveness for those indications, hormone content, APIs, potential side effects, etc., use regimens. So the POP Council is developing a non-hormonal MPT ring for prevention of pregnancy, HIV, other STIs, and BV that contains copper and lactide. Has been funded for the last 5 years through a NICHD P50 Center grant that fortunately, alongside product development, preclinical product development, included US end user preference research about the product. The range of indications for this product, as well as other novel attributes of it, like the non-hormonal, like it may be able to be used on demand, also presented an opportunity to explore perceptions of these types of varied potential MPT ring attributes. Next slide. And so our study objectives were among a national sample of US women to understand their preferences regarding key attributes of an MPT ring via a discrete choice experiment, their interest in an MPT ring product via direct elicitation questions, and heterogeneity in both the preferences and interest in rings among women with differing characteristics. Next slide. So to be eligible, women needed to be ages 18 to 49, currently are interested in using contraception, sexually active, and we over-recruited for Black women. We conducted online recruitment via Prime panels from December 2023 to Jan 2024, so it's 2 months. The survey included lots of questions, but also embedded in the middle of it was a discrete choice experiment with 12 choice sets. So discrete choice experiments is a quantitative experimental technique to understand how people make trade-offs between these different options through their completion of a series of choice sets in which they're presented with different combinations. So we had 7 attributes that you see along the left-hand column with varying levels for each attribute. These were identified through formative research with 25 women, which are publishing elsewhere. The choice sets were very well understood by participants. 90% of participants said that they were either somewhat easy or very easy to complete. We analyzed data using mixed multinomial logit models. We did things like assessing the relative importance of attributes, trade-offs between them, and heterogeneity in preferences through the inclusion of interaction terms. Next slide. So this, on average, the sample was 31 years old, about half married or cohabiting, a little over half with children. 62% were white, 32% Black African American, and 17% were Hispanic or Latino. About half had completed a high school education or less. The most common current contraceptive methods in order were condoms, pills, and withdrawal, surprisingly. 17% of women, interestingly, reported ever using a vaginal ring. 4% currently. The one we asked this was pegged to NuvaRing or Annovera. And 33% knew other women who had used a ring, 33% of the whole sample. Over 2/3 had discontinued a contraceptive method due to unwanted side effects or effects on menses. And SRH concerns are prevalent. 43% had ever had an unintended pregnancy. That's very similar to 42% found in a recent, I think it was a Guttmacher survey nationwide. 25% reported worry about getting HIV, and 36% about getting at least one of the STIs we asked about in the next 12 months. And 9% had reported testing positive for an STI in the last year. And half had ever had BV, and 1/3 of those, they'd had it several or many times. Next slide. Oh, you can go to the next slide. So what are women's preferences regarding key MPT ring characteristics? So this shows the relative importance of attributes. So this uses information from the coefficients from the MMNL model, but it's actually looking in relation to each other, not just the straight preference, valence of the preference or strength of the preference. And so we see that pregnancy prevention effectiveness is most important, followed by HIV and STI prevention effectiveness. Effect on menses and having with no effect preferred over heavier or unpredictable periods was also significantly preferred, as was prevention of BV, even though, alongside these are all in the same model, so they kind of control for each other in some ways. So, and then non-hormonal and on-demand options were not preferred by the sample overall. We'll look at heterogeneity in those preferences though later. Next slide. So I wanted to go through and unpack for each of the kind of either attributes within the discrete choice experiment or sets of attributes, what we found in relation to heterogeneity as well as sort of trade-offs women would be willing to make. So as shown on the last slide, overall, the effectiveness for pregnancy prevention or HIV prevention was about half that of pregnancy prevention, and then STI prevention was about half that for HIV prevention in terms of the preferred level of effectiveness. We had 4 levels for each. Actually, sorry, we had 4 levels for HIV and 3 for STIs. We found that younger women and women with no children preferred higher pregnancy prevention effectiveness, and younger women also preferred higher HIV prevention effectiveness. And perhaps not surprisingly for women worried about HIV prevention effectiveness was as important as pregnancy prevention effectiveness. And in fact, they would give up 10.7% in pregnancy prevention effectiveness for a 10% increase in HIV prevention effectiveness. So there's, willingness to trade off pregnancy prevention for HIV prevention. Next slide. Turning to hormonal versus non-hormonal, for the sample overall, again, whether it's hormonal or non-hormonal was not important. This was likely due to kind of a cancellation effect where some women preferred non-hormonal and some preferred hormonal, knowing that based on our qualitative research as well, that being aware that hormonal will likely be more effective. So 35% of our sample considered non-hormonal, actually strongly considered it as important. A larger chunk considered it as generally important. And among that sample, there was a significant preference for the ring to be hormonal, and they would actually give up 14.2% in pregnancy prevention effectiveness for the ring to be non-hormonal. Similarly, in some ways, women who had previously discontinued contraceptive use due to unwanted side effects also preferred a non-hormonal ring. Next slide. In terms of effect on menses, noting that the reason we asked about may cause heavier, unpredictable periods is because that even though probably uncommon, that would be the most likely side effect or effect on menses from the particular ring we're developing. So with that limitation in mind, we didn't ask about other variations in effects on menses. Overall, there was a preference for no effect, and that was stronger for women who had discontinued previous contraceptive method due to unwanted effects on menses, but there was actually no preference difference based on their previous previous experience of menstrual problems in general. Next slide. Yep. So we also, as you saw, asked about continuous use only versus either continuous or the potential for an on-demand option, which again is possible, potentially possible, not definitely possible with the ring that we're developing. We found there's no overall preference. There was a slight indication that women with multiple sexual partners who may have more intermittent risk had marginally higher preference for that on-demand option. Interestingly, when we sort of, after the DCEs, when we asked directly for among women who were interested in this product, how they would want to use it, 2/3 actually about 1/3 said on demand, 1/3 said sort of intermittently, maybe a weekend a month or something like that, and only 1/3 said continuously. So it may be that the strength of other attributes in the model may have obscured an effect for an on-demand option, but regardless, it doesn't seem to be a predominant feature of women's decision-making. And finally, are women interested in using an MPT ring in general, and which women are most interested? So right after the DCE choice sets, we asked women directly about the likelihood of them using an MPT ring with the following profile. We asked about a non-hormonal ring because of the nature of the study, the product we're focused on. And you'll notice that the levels of effectiveness we chose are quite moderate in nature, probably lower, certainly lower, I think, than would be intended. But what we wanted to get at was we're not going to present women with the most ideal version of this product. But women were very interested. 73% said they were either very likely or likely to use it, and 69% said they would actually want to start using it within a year when we asked about timing, which is often an indication of sort of authenticity of choice of reported acceptability or reported willingness to use. And 76% would use it for both pregnancy and HIV or STI prevention. Next slide. Turning to which women are most interested in the ring, in this table you see a lot of similar characteristics that I shared before, but a reminder that here we're looking at the reported likelihood of using after women have sort of considered the product in full. Women, it really broke down to these four kind of categories. One, the most strong in some ways, was vaginal ring familiarity. That's not to say that women who are not familiar with the ring were not likely. Again, 73% overall interest. This is just that the women, they were more interested if they had familiarity. They were also more interested if they, not surprisingly, had that strong preference for non-hormonal contraception, and also if they'd sought care for an STI in the last year. Sociodemographics, many of these fell out of our final adjusted model, interestingly, but having children was associated, and I think that may be likely due to the acceptability of a little bit lower effectiveness for the especially pregnancy prevention effectiveness among women with children, which I shared earlier. Women from urban areas were also slightly more likely than women in suburban or rural. And perceived risk as well drove interest. Next slide, which is my final slide with conclusions. So it is important to point out that in the sample, a very large national sample of US women, there were prevalent unmet SRH needs. And that really suggests the need for even more acceptable options, including MPT options. In general, also the multipurpose value resonates. We found that strongly in our qualitative research as well, and people are no strangers on this call to that concept. But I think it shows up in a very statistical manner as well. And it's also important to note that the effectiveness for pregnancy HIV prevention, which has really been the focus of most research to date and comprises most MPT rings that are being developed, those are most important, but STI and BV prevention were also valued. Preferences are somewhat heterogeneous, and it's important to pay attention to that in research, that there are large subsets of population. In fact, some preferences may cancel each other out, like the hormonal or non-hormonal. If you're just looking overall, it looks like it may not be important. And most women are interested in using this non-hormonal MPT ring. I dare say that would probably extend to a ring that was was hormonal, even with more conservative levels of effectiveness. And again, most are willing to use it soon after it's available, and various characteristics were associated, as I've gone through, with that interest. So in conclusion, the main conclusion I would have is really that there's this continued need for end user research regarding varied preferences and trade-offs in order to optimize future MPT products and as well as their rollout. And that includes vaginal rings among the various other amazing products that are being developed. All right, I am done. Thank you very much.
Wow. Nyaradzo, Ali, and thank you all so much for such outstanding presentations. They were so interesting, and your research is really, really helping to advance the field of MPTs. Anyone who's interested, we'll now open it up for discussion. So I know that there has been some back and forth with the presenters over chat, but if anyone has questions that you would like to ask directly, please raise your virtual hand. We do like to have this platform be a way just for people to connect as well. So you're welcome to enter your question in the chat, raise your virtual hand, and we can have discussion that way. I actually have a couple as we're waiting. have a couple questions. So Anne, I would love to ask you, start off with a question to you. The focus of your study is on the ring, which is, as you said, really relevant because we have that is the dominant technology MPT device in development. But there are, as you also noted, there are an array of other MPTs in development, other formulations, films, as you know, we talked about. Can you extrapolate? Has your team been able to extrapolate any of the findings that you discovered to any of these other MPTs in the pipeline, or is that something you're looking to do down the road?
Thanks for that question. I think that is a bit of a mind bender and would take a bit more time to think about probably, but I do think that I'm always surprised at whenever we do product research related to MPTs, and we've just concluded a large systematic review of non-ring vaginal products for the Gates Foundation, and just seeing the high acceptability of these products, and particularly MPT products. I think this study speaks to that in general, although we can't say anything definitive about it, of course, because we didn't ask about those other types of products. But there's lots of studies out there, including by the other colleagues who presented today, that shed light on that. I think one other thing I would pull out is the importance of paying attention to those subsets, any subsets of women who have strong preferences, particularly perhaps regarding APIs, in some cases also a regimen. I do think things like for the film, the set it and forget it is very important to a lot of women, particularly women who want to use it continuously. It may be some women have more intermittent risk and may prefer an on-demand option. But so just paying attention to those sort of key subsets of the population. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from anyone? Nyaradzo and Ali, I have another one. So, I know you were working really closely with the developers at University of Pittsburgh. Do you have, what are sort of the thoughts of sort of the next steps for the film? And I don't know if you or anyone else from the development side of the team would be interested in answering that.
So thank you, Bethany. Ali, I don't know if you want to answer that, but before we go there, I'm happy to see old friends and old faces and new faces in the audience, and the conversations going on in the chats. Very, very interesting. So Ali, do you want to tackle that, or should we hand it over to Junmei? I think
we could hand it to Junmei, actually. Thank you.
Sorry, I had a little bit hard time turn on the video. Okay. Hi, thank you everyone for the nice presentation. So for our film development, we have several avenues we are pursuing for different products and different indications. So for specifics for the MPT products, we are pursuing the deepening LNG combo films. Due to the matrix termination, we are looking for new partners. Fortunately, we get very favorable pre-IND feedback from the FDA. So, and then for the LNG, we are developing a monthly film for heavy menstrual bleeding and contraception. So we are also pursuing other films like monoclonal antibodies with MPT indications. Lynn is also here. Lynn, do you have anything to add?
No, thank you. You covered everything. So we are just reiterate, we are very happy about the clinical trial results, and then based on the acceptabilities, it's looking very favorable as a alternative dosage form options for MPT. As Junmei mentioned, so we are utilizing this platform, really exploring MPT for contraception, HIV, HSV, and then we could utilize for multiple active ingredients, including antibodies. So we'll see what happens next. Thank you.
That's really exciting. It's great. Great to see your faces, everyone. Any other questions? We have about 5 more minutes. Great. Okay. So if there are no questions, more questions, we will be, just a reminder, we are recording this webinar. Unfortunately, I think there are a few people who were not able to see the slides, but I want to assure you that this is being recorded and we will post the slides. Well, actually, we'll be posting not the OO2 slides, but we'll be posting the recording, and then the and slides will be on the website. I think you could probably reach out maybe directly to Ali and Nyaradzo for the slides or ask permission, but we'll have to wait to post the slides until the publication's out. So Ali or Nyaradzo, do you have anything to comment on that?
No, happy to hear from anyone. And these topics will be, unpacked more fully in the paper. Our team has been kind of at a galloping pace trying to take advantage of the opportunity to do the analysis in partnership with a team at WITS.
It's wonderful. Okay, well, thank you. Claudia, do you want to say anything to wrap up?
Thank you so much. Yes, I actually, before we say goodbye, I had a question which is quite practical, and please forgive me if this has been addressed elsewhere, but the pharmacist in me was just wondering, when this comes to fruition, where will this be available? Will we be available in the pharmacies to dispense this? I know it will differ globally, but will this be something that patients can come in and we can assist them as pharmacists? Or, yeah, I was just curious.
So I'll start, Claudia, and the other team members will come in. So one of the beauties of the film is its versatility. It's discrete, it's portable, and it's scalable. So I think it can be delivered from many outlets, whether it's the clinic, whether it's the pharmacy, even in community outreaches. I think when you look at works done by Ngure and others, the successes of delivery of PrEP from multiple outlets has been shown to work. So, and there's no sort of fancy or strict cold chain maintenance. So pharmacy, clinic, outreach, community, I think the sky is the limit. So that's my initial thought, but maybe Ali has got other ideas, or even Junmei will have other ideas. But just at the top of my head, I think we can scale it from many outlets. Thank you for that question, Claudia.
No, I think you've covered it well. I'm sure that, there's, of course, the regulatory environments, but there are a lot of, really strong models of community-based delivery of oral PrEP and others, products, contraceptives as well. So my expectation would be that, this is envisioned to be a flexible and portable and accessible. And I think that's something that really participants recognized, even though they were accessing it through a clinical trial kind of environment, that this afforded access that some of the other products they were currently using for contraceptives or HIV prevention didn't allow. So
Thank you. Well, that's so exciting.
And I'll just
yes.
say quickly as well that the copper lactide ring is also, there's an interest in delivering potentially over the counter. That's a little complicated cost-wise in the US with insurance mechanisms, and it's not always the case that over the counter would be cheaper necessarily. But and women in our qualitative research did express just a strong interest in that potential. So we're hopeful for that as well.
That's great. Okay. Well, seeing as we've run out of time and I don't see any more questions, I'd like to extend our sincere thanks to these three outstanding speakers, Dr. Mgodi, Minnis, and Gottert. Thank you for generously sharing your time, your expertise, and research with us today. Your presentations have once again highlighted the critical role of end-user research in shaping MPTs that are not only scientifically robust, but also responsive to the needs, preferences, and importantly, the lived experiences of women. So thank you for your valuable contributions to this important conversation and for advancing the MPT field. I'd also like to thank our moderator, Dr. Bethany Young-Holt, for moderating today's discussion, and to all of you who've joined us today. Your participation and engagement always make it so meaningful. I'd also like to acknowledge and thank the NIH for their generous support making this work and today's webinar possible. And if you want to learn more about the IMPT, please explore our resources, stay connected. We've got the details on the screen. And thank you once again for joining us. And we hope to see you soon at the next Let's Talk MPTs webinars. But until then, I hope you have a wonderful day and a restful weekend. Goodbye, everyone.